Alright, let's get started. So knowing Tricky Tony, Deltarune Chapter 5 is probably coming out really soon, and it'll just shadow drop to little to no fanfare. Wait, a Chapter 5 trailer dropped in the Nintendo Direct? I threw out a huge section of the video talking about a theory about the Dark World? Toby did his thing again. Well, let's see what we can still predict using new knowledge from the trailer. Warning, some of the things I will talk about will be from before the trailer dropped, so just be warned that some things might be out of date. So I have a general idea for how the pacing of the chapter will take place. The chapter will start in the light world with us going to the festival with Susie. Fun festival shenanigans will take place, maybe a few mini games here and there that you can do, like carnival games. I think we'll also get more with Noelle and Susie here as well. And this is a pretty safe bet with all the hints that were dropped in previous chapters and with Chapter 4 taking place the day before the festival. This would also be the time where you can visit Castletown, where you could see all the new recruits from Chapter 4. I could also see Castletown shifting yet again to be maybe having more of a festival vibe like the one in the town. Then something will happen that causes the Fun Gang to get drawn into the new Dark World. Whether that be Susie seeing the night and chasing it down, or Carol doing something that allows the party to get the code that they need for the bunker, or Asgore doing something that causes a Dark World to open and we have to close it. Of course, then next is the Dark World section. Now this could be fairly interesting. From the hints that we were given in Chapter 4, it could be a few things. One theory is that Dark World will be a garden of some kind in Asgore's flower shop. Gerson in Chapter 4 said Chapter 5 was a field of pink and gold doused in fires of jealousy, with the Darkners being based on flowers in a shop as well as the ones that were in the back room. I think it would be kinda neat if there were something like the Axum Rangers from Mario RPG, but knowing Tricky Tony, whatever is going to happen will be pretty unpredictable. But we can always try and watch our theories go down with the ship. I think if we were to go down this route of a garden or nature theme, I think there would be a decent chance of seeing a Flowey reference somewhere within the Dark World.
That's a wonderful idea!
Well, with the Chapter 5 trailer dropping, we have more hints as to what the Dark World might end up being. There's very little footage to go over, but let's go over it. The garden theme is very much the one we're going with. It looks like it takes a lot of inspiration from Japanese gardens, with a Darkner shown to have a blooming sakura tree on its head in the trailer. There also seems to be the gang approaching a white quill. Now this looks very similar to what could be the White Pen of Hope that Gerson talked about, but who knows if that's what this one small scene really means. We see the gang sliding down a large beanstalk and running through what looks like a bog. Originally, I had a whole section on a theory of the Dark World being New Hometown, but it seems more likely that the garden one is the one that we're having moving forward. But there's something I still think will fit that theory from that original section. I believe this chapter will focus on Asgore and his mental state. With both the prophecy panel and Gerson's talk about it in the chapter in Gerson's fight, I believe that main antagonist will still be Asgore. But we will get into the characters and what I think will happen with them a little bit later. Instead of a regular king though, maybe he's more like a shogun or an emperor. We won't have that long to wait to see. One thing that I will carry over from the new hometown theory is that we will still get more information about Dessa's disappearance. How much of it and how accurate it actually is, I'm not exactly sure. But we will get some more information about this, and I think that it will be important to what happens at the end of the chapter. But what happens after the Dark World? After we stop Asgore, or whatever the boss is of the Dark World? Well, I think the end of Chapter Stinger will finally be us getting introduced to Deltarune's Asriel. For almost every chapter now, they have said Asriel was coming home for a visit. Well, what would be the best cliffhanger to get us going after a chapter that started off the final act of Deltarune? Us finally being able to meet the prodigal son. I feel like Chapter 5 will give us a lot of questions about Dessa's disappearance and the bunker with very little answers. But I feel like with the introduction of Asriel, there might be someone who can give us answers about Dessa in Chapter 6. especially if you subscribe to the theory that this was not the first Fun Gang. And if Des is truly the knight, and has become the way she is because of her and Asriel's Dark World adventures, Asriel would have answers. But all that really hinges on the fact that Chapter 5 is going to be the true introduction to the mystery about Des' disappearance. It could be more about getting one of those 3 codes for the bunker for all I know. So the main layout for Chapter 5 I believe will be Festival, Dark World, Asriel appears, end of chapter. It'll most likely be a bridge chapter for a more serious tone in the story, still filled with plenty of jokes and Toby Fox humor, but taking itself a little more seriously as we deal with the consequences of learning the prophecy in Chapter 4. I sense we'll get more of the night, more strange phone calls with Chris, and more delving onto what's going on in the background. As to what exactly is the content of the chapter, I don't really know, and I can't say anything in specific, but this is what I think the overall layout of the actual chapter itself will be. But next up we have... Where we left off the gang in Chapter 4, we were at the lowest we've seen them. Chris is clearly under the thumb of someone working with the antagonist, when we are not in control. Susie is determined to break the prophecy and not let the final panel that she smashed come to pass. Ralsei is really struggling with his self-worth and identity outside of the prophecy itself. Noelle is clearly struggling with putting her foot down, and what we saw with her mother, it only makes that reasoning stronger. She's even in a worse manipulation spot if you are on the weird route, but we'll get to that. Asgore is doing something with Carol, but we don't know exactly what yet. And Sans is dancing with our mom. So there are a lot of places the characters can go. Let's start with Chris. Chris's arc over the course of Deltarune so far has been about control, with a lot of allusions to being a puppet on a string or other visual metaphors like being a heart in a cage, but also Chris is clearly being manipulated by whoever is on the other side of the phone, as we saw with the Chapter 4 ending. I think we'll just get more information about Chris's situation. Some info for theorists and people who analyze the story to go over, but not any definitive answers. I honestly don't think we'll get exactly what is happening with Chris until late Chapter 6, early Chapter 7. We didn't learn Frisk's true name until the end of Undertale itself, after all. So I think the revelation will probably be saved for the start of Act 3 of the story. And I don't think that the difference between the Soul and Chris will be expounded upon either. With everything going on in the story at the moment, it's not gonna stop dead in its tracks and be like, let's focus on Chris and the player, woo! It's not something I foresee happening in the chapter at all. Susie has already had a bunch of character development, going from a very standoffish bully character to someone you could really call a hero, from selfish to selfless. But I think that her character might start to shake or waver over Chapter 5. Something will happen that will cause her to feel the sting of rejection once more, and she might start to backpedal a little bit. Maybe not a full-on slide back to where she started, but just a little bit more easily set off and a little bit more standoffish again. And I think the catalyst to that is going to be a big fight between her and Carol at the festival. We already know that she is going against Carol hardcore by taking Noelle to the festival. But I think right before going into the Dark World, Susie will have a standoff with her. A big, nasty, public fight. And Susie already does not have the reputation of being a nice person outside of the main heroes. So this might cause some of the town to turn a bit harsher than they already are, causing her to close herself off once again. Maybe even paralleling the scene where she told us about what happened with the piano in Chapter 4. Then in the Dark World, it will be her trying to fight off that urge to close herself off and open herself back up. A lot of people are already scared of Susie in Hometown, and a big, public blowout could put everything that she built up to crumble a little bit as everyone around her turns against her. At least, that is something that I could see happening. But knowing Toby, it could be way off mark. Ralsei is an interesting one. He's just starting to come into his own and realizing that he's more than just the tool for the prophecy. He is more than just the lone prince from the dark. He can have his own likes, wants, needs, and be his own person. I feel like in Chapter 5, Ralsei will still struggle with allowing his own voice to come through. Ralsei is a very self-sacrificing person. He wants everyone to smile, even at the cost of his own happiness. And Chapter 5, I think, is going to really challenge that aspect of himself. He knows everything about the prophecy, and he wants to change it, but he struggles fighting against it, with being that tool. So I think Ralsei will try and act a little bit more independent. Maybe some of our agency will be turned over to Ralsei. Since Chapter 4 was such a turning point for him, I would love to see him develop into his own person and have his voice really come through other than just agreeing with the players' decisions all the time. Oh, and we'll definitely see his room fill up with all the stuff that we took from Chapter 4. Here's the next question. What will happen with Noelle? Will she join us in the Dark World and be a playable character again? We just don't know for sure at the moment. I would love to go with a high likelihood of us being able to control her once again during battles, but I see a lot of her character in this chapter continuing with the thread set up in Chapter 4 with her mom. How does Susie get in a big fight with Carol? Well, it's because she finds Noelle hanging out with Susie, and despite all the character growth that she had in Chapter 2, it's not like she's going to be able to stand up to her mother. Abusive relationships are hard to get out of, and when Noelle has been so close to her mother for the longest time, it would be hard to kick bad habits, especially when it comes to people-pleasing. I think that she will chase us into the Dark World after the large fight to try and apologize to Susie and make it up to her, thus allowing her into the party once again. But will the route change have any significant change on her character this chapter? It's really hard to tell because if you end the Chapter 4 in the normal route, she's going to the festival with Susie. If you end it in the weird route, she's going with Chris. Now, it could be that they are just going all in a group anyway, and it won't have any big significant changes outside of tone and certain dialogue choices. But in the Spamton sweepstakes, there was a page labeled Chapter 5, and it has all the numbers of the chapters up to Chapter 5, appearing in different sizes. And some, if clicked, would say applicable or not applicable. Some have theorized that this is related to the weird route, and for the most part, it has been relatively correct. And the next biggest size after Chapter 2 and 3 is 5. With the new information about Chapter 5 we got in the trailer, I'm not sure how much more the weird route will change the story. But with Chris being the main person going to the festival with Noelle, I'm fully expecting more unsettling things to happen, and that Noelle will somehow get manipulated more, and even more than in the normal route. Her story will still have a decent step forward in Chapter 5. What about some of the other characters in this chapter? I still feel like Birdley will be a pretty big joke of a character, despite how I feel like he could have so much more depth to his character. I would love to see him in the Dark World again, and fighting by the hero's sides this time. I would love to see more of him growing out of this complex that he has to be better than everyone else, that he has to be the number one person, that he has to be player one. But because of how Chapter 2 can end, I think it would be decently hard to make sure that he fits every scenario of Chapter 5. Sans will just be there, I don't think we're getting a lot out of him this chapter. The entirety of the game, he's been pretty much a joke delivery machine. Outside of the one scene of him dancing with Toriel, he's not done anything major, and I think it will stay that way. A lot of the Undertale characters, outside of a few, have pretty much just been background characters the whole time. So for him to all of a sudden be so important in the story of Chapter 5 is not something I foresee happening. Asgore will be the antagonist of the Chapter 5 Dark World. Between the gardening foreshadow with Gerson and the prophecy panel that is clearly talking about him being labeled Boss Number 5, I think it's safe to say that he will be standing in our hero's way this chapter. Asgore in Undertale was only talked about the entire game, alluded to in conversations and anecdotes, but we never really got a chance to know the guy. Outside of the final boss section, we never got to see him all that much. So, this is the chapter where he will finally get the spotlight. This is why we will learn how he got kicked out of the police, why he's working for Carol, what he's talking about in the holiday house in Chapter 4, what the board with the strings is. This is going to be Asgore's chapter, and I really hope we get more of him and the history of the Dreamer family as well, and also that he kinda just stops being a one-off joke. Toriel, I don't think she'll have that strong of a showing in Chapter 5. While she did get kidnapped in Chapter 3 by Tenna, and was the target of the night, I don't think she'll have much to do outside of maybe more of her and Sans being together at the festival. Maybe that's what finally sparks Asgore to make the Dark World in the flower shop. I could see why him seeing the two of them together would cause him to try to escape to a place where he is in control. But in regards to character growth, I don't see them being touched on more than that. The last character we need to touch on here before we move on is the Knight. I think we will get more hints about their true identity. Yes! But I do not think there will be much more than a few appearances like we had in Chapter 4. Maybe they'll go on the Fun Gang a few times in the chapter, but that's all I can really think of. We still have 2 more chapters, and having a final climactic fight with them this early is just not going to happen. Just more hinting and theory fuel. Lastly, hidden boss? Yeah, there'll be a hidden boss. I think we'll have another in the same vein as Spamton, Jevil, and Gerson. I don't think we'll be getting another Shadow Crystal fight like the one in Chapter 3. Toby doesn't have the same thing happen twice in his games. Not more than once will he have the same twist. Toby has a habit of never doing it twice. And I think that in this case, we'll get something more like a Spamton, Jevil, or a Gerson. And it's clearly going to be friendly. The only other few things that I'm really wanting for Chapter 5 is just more banger soundtracks, more funny moments, more heartfelt characters, fun and engaging fights, things that really make me think, and a cliffhanger that won't leave me ripping my hair out and wondering where the rest of the game is. Toby, please, I'm on my hands and knees. Hey, thanks for making it to the end of the video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Just a quick few updates from me. I am still working on the next big video essay. It's going to be around an hour and 30-ish minutes, and it just started the editing phase, so it'll be a while still. I had to push this video up because Chapter 5 got a release date, and the next video will most likely be a discussion on Chapter 5 based on what we learned during that chapter, so be on the lookout for that. But thank you so much for all the support lately. You guys have been amazing supporting me, and we're almost at 800 subscribers, and I hope to hit at least 1,000 by the end of the year, and maybe monetization. But anyway, if you want to watch more of my stuff, I have a video essay about the first 4 chapters of Deltarune. Or maybe you want to watch a video to go to sleep. In that case, check out my Cozy Places and Non-Cozy Gaming video. But anyway, thank you so much. Have a good rest of your day.